Ethan Ward recognized her immediately, not the woman, but her hands. The same elegant fingers that had once wrapped around a chipped mug of chamomile tea 15 years ago, when he was homeless and freezing to death. "Impossible," he whispered, watching the rain-soaked woman count crumpled dollars at the diner counter, her hungry child beside her. The manager's voice cut through the silence. "This isn't a shelter, lady." And something inside the billionaire's carefully constructed world cracked open. The scent triggered something. A memory, 15 years old, sharp as broken glass.
Chamomile.
Cinnamon toast. A woman's voice. "Eat, child. You matter." He shook it off. "Daddy," Lily whispered, her voice small beneath the hum of rain against glass. "Can I get the pancakes?" He blinked, nodded, tried to smile. But his phone buzzed again, the screen illuminating his daughter's disappointed face in cold blue light. The Tokyo deal. The Singapore merger. The sole acquisition that couldn't wait. It could always wait. He just never let it. Lily looked down at her menu, her fingers tracing the laminated edges like she was memorizing them. She didn't ask again. She'd learned not to. Ethan's throat tightened. When had she learned that? "Hello, my lovelies at Ducal Tales. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Wherever you are in the world. I hope you're somewhere warm, somewhere safe. If you're new here, welcome to the Ducal family. And if you haven't subscribed yet, would you join us? These stories are crafted for hearts exactly like yours. Now, let me take you back into that diner. Because everything is about to change." The bell above the door chimed. Ethan didn't look up. But Lily did. A woman stepped inside, drenched, trembling, her coat soaked through and clinging to her frame. In her arms, she carried a boy no older than 6. His face was pale, his lips faintly blue. He wasn't crying. He looked too tired to cry. The woman, Eva, moved toward the counter with a kind of cautious grace that came from years of making herself invisible. Her boots squelched with every step, leaving dark prints on the faded linoleum. Her hands shook as she set the boy down gently on a stool and pulled a few crumpled dollar bills from her pocket. They were damp, soft from being handled too many times. She counted them once, twice. Her face crumpled. The fluorescent lights above buzzed, harsh and unforgiving, catching the silver tracks of old tears on her cheeks. "Ma'am," the manager said sharply, arms crossed. His name tag read Leonard. His tone read annoyance. "You ordering or not? You're holding up the line." There was no line. Eva's voice barely rose above a whisper. Just water, please." "Water?" Leonard scoffed, his breath reeking of stale cigarettes. "This isn't a shelter." The boy tugged her sleeve. His voice cracked, hoarse from crying earlier. "Mom, it's okay. I can sleep hungry." The diner went silent. Ethan's hand froze on his phone. Lily's eyes went wide, filling with tears. Eva's face flushed with humiliation, a deep, burning red that spread down her neck. She pulled her son closer, murmuring apologies, trying to back toward the door. A few patrons glanced over. Most looked away, their coffee suddenly fascinating. "Daddy!" Lily's voice was urgent now, pleading, cracking. "Do something." Ethan looked at his daughter, at the tears pooling in her eyes, at the way her small hands gripped the edge of the table. Then he looked at the woman. Really looked. And the world stopped. The curve of her cheekbones. The set of her jaw. The way her eyes held both fire and exhaustion, a warrior's eyes in a losing battle. The shape of her hands as they trembled around those worn dollar bills. No. His chest seized. She looked exactly like her. Exactly like the woman who had saved his life 15 years ago. The woman who'd found him shivering in a doorway during the coldest winter on record, 17 years old and ready to give up. Margaret Brooks, who'd taken him into her tiny apartment that smelled like chamomile and hope. Who'd made him cinnamon toast because it was all she had. Who'd looked at him with those same eyes, fierce, exhausted kind, and said, "You have a future, even if you can't see it yet." Who'd believed in him when he was nothing? Who'd pushed him to finish school, to apply for scholarships, to stop running? Who died alone in a county hospital before he could ever say thank you, before he could repay even a fraction of what she'd given him? He'd searched for her family. Found nothing. The apartment had been cleared out. No forwarding address. No daughter listed in any records he could find. And now she was standing in front of him. Margaret's daughter. Shoulders shaking. Counting coins. Trying not to cry as a stranger shamed her for being poor. The same poverty Margaret had lived in. The same poverty she'd sheltered him from. History repeating itself. Except this time, Ethan wasn't powerless. He stood. The chair scraped loud against the floor, a sound like a gunshot in the silent diner. Every head turned. Lily held her breath, her small hands clasped together like a prayer. And Ethan Ward, billionaire, CEO, man who hadn't cried in a decade, walked toward the counter with his heart lodged in his throat and Margaret's voice echoing in his skull. "You matter. Don't you forget that." He hadn't. And he wouldn't let her daughter be forgotten either. But what he did next, no one in that diner saw coming. Ethan's voice cut through the diner like silk over steel. "Put their meal on my tab," he said quietly. "Everything they want." Leonard blinked, his expression souring. "Sir, I don't think. I wasn't asking." The manager's mouth snapped shut, but his eyes glittered with resentment. Eva turned sharply, her body language immediately defensive, shoulders squared, chin lifted despite the trembling. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I don't accept charity," she said, her voice low and edged with something sharp. "Pride." The kind that had been beaten down but refused to die. "It's not charity," Ethan said carefully. "Then what is it?" "Decency." Her jaw clenched. "We're fine. Thank you, but no." She wasn't fine. Her coat was torn at the seam, held together with safety pins. Her boots were separating from their soles, held together with what looked like superglue and sheer willpower. The boy's jacket was 2 sizes too small, his wrists bare to the cold, his hands chapped and red. But her eyes blazed with defiance. Ethan recognized that fire. He'd had it once. The kind that made you refuse help even when you were drowning, because accepting meant admitting you were drowning in the first place. Margaret had seen through his fire. She'd offered help without pity, without judgment. He needed to do the same. "You're right," Ethan said, shifting his approach. "I apologize. That was presumptuous of me." Eva blinked, clearly expecting an argument. Ethan crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with her son. The boy stared back, wary, guarded, but curious beneath the fear. "What's your name?" Ethan asked gently, his voice stripped of the boardroom edge. The boy glanced at his mother. She hesitated, then gave a tiny nod. "Oliver," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Oliver." Ethan smiled, a real one, soft and genuine, not the corporate mask he wore in meetings. "I'm Ethan. And that's my daughter, Lily." He gestured toward the booth, where Lily watched with wide, hopeful eyes. "It's her birthday today. We were just about to order way too much food. I always mess up the portions." He gave a self-deprecating laugh. "And honestly, she hates eating with just me. I'm terrible company. You'd actually be doing us a favor if you'd join us. Please." It was a lie wrapped in truth. He did order wrong. He was terrible company. But he was also desperate to help without crushing this woman's dignity. The way Margaret had helped him. Lily, catching on with the emotional intelligence of someone far beyond her 8 years, slid out of the booth and walked over. She stopped in front of Oliver, her expression painfully earnest. "Please," Lily said softly, looking up at Eva with eyes that shimmered. "I don't like eating alone. And birthdays are supposed to be happy, but—" Her voice cracked. "But it's hard when it's just us." The honesty in that statement cut through the diner like a blade. Eva's expression flickered, suspicion giving way to recognition. She saw it too. The loneliness. The too busy father. The child trying so hard to be enough. Her grip on Oliver's shoulder loosened slightly. Just. She swallowed hard, her throat working. Just this once. They sat together in the booth, Lily and Oliver on one side, Eva and Ethan on the other. The warmth of the diner began to seep into Eva's bones, but she kept her coat on anyway, pulled tight like armor. Ethan watched her carefully. Not with pity. With recognition. She had her mother's hands. Slim, elegant despite the roughness, worn from work. Margaret had made tea with those hands, had wrapped them around his frozen fingers when he'd shown up at her door, half dead from cold and hunger. You matter. Don't you forget that. He'd built an empire on those words. And he'd never gotten to tell her. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes named Doris, brought water in glasses that had seen better decades. The ice clinked softly. Eva stared at hers like it might vanish. I'm Eva, she said finally, her voice quiet and wary. Eva Brooks. Brooks. The name was a fist to his sternum. Margaret Brooks. It was her. It was really her daughter. Ethan's hands curled into fists beneath the table, nails digging into his palms to keep his composure. It's nice to meet you, Eva, he managed, his voice rougher than he intended. She frowned, studying him with sharp, intelligent eyes. Have we met before? No, he lied, the word bitter on his tongue. Not her, but someone who looked just like her. Someone who'd given him everything when she had nothing. Eva's gaze lingered on him, skeptical. You don't usually do this, do you? Buy meals for strangers. No, Ethan admitted. Then why us? Because your mother saved my life, and I never got to thank her. Because I owe her everything, and she died thinking I forgot her. Because I see her in your eyes, and it's killing me. Because your son shouldn't have to sleep hungry, Ethan said instead, his voice quiet but steady. And neither should you. Eva's breath hitched. Her fingers tightened around the water glass, condensation dampening her skin. We're not your responsibility, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. Now it just sounded tired. I know. Then why? Because someone once helped me when I had nothing, and I never got the chance to pay it forward. His eyes met hers, held them, until now. Something shifted in her expression. The suspicion didn't disappear. It was too ingrained, born from too many betrayals, but it softened. Just slightly. Before she could respond, Doris returned with plates, pancakes drowning in syrup, scrambled eggs still steaming, toast with real butter, a bowl of soup that smelled like comfort, and a burger for Oliver that made his eyes go wide as moons. I didn't order all this, Eva whispered, alarm creeping back into her voice. I did, Ethan said simply, his tone leaving no room for argument. It's Lily's birthday. Let us celebrate the right way. Lily nudged Oliver gently, her smile warm. Try the pancakes first. They're the best thing here. Oliver looked at his mother, his expression pleading. Eva's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. He ate like he hadn't seen food in days. Because he hadn't. As the children ate and slowly, carefully began to talk, tentative at first, then warming into genuine conversation, Ethan leaned back, watching Eva. She barely touched her plate. Her eyes stayed locked on Oliver, making sure he had enough, that he ate slowly so he wouldn't get sick, that he drank water between bites. She was a mother first. A person second. Just like Margaret had been. Margaret, who'd given everything to everyone else. Who'd worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. Who'd gotten sick and had no one to take care of her because she'd spent her life taking care of others. Ethan's chest ached with old grief, sharp and fresh as the day he'd found out. He wouldn't let history repeat itself. Not this time. Eva, he said quietly, leaning forward so the kids wouldn't hear. When's the last time you ate? She stiffened, her fork freezing midair. Infine. That's not what I asked. Her hands trembled. The fork clattered against the plate. 2 days, she whispered, the admission clearly costing her. His stomach dropped like a stone. Eat, he said, his voice soft but unyielding. Not a suggestion. A plea. Please. She looked at him, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. Fragile. Tentative. Something that felt like trust trying to take root in scorched earth. She took a bite. Then another. And for the first time in what felt like years, Ethan felt like he'd done something that mattered. But across the diner, Leonard the manager was on his phone. Whispering. Watching them. His eyes glittered with something cold and calculating. When he hung up, his smile was thin and sharp. Because Eva Brooks wasn't just a struggling single mother. She was someone very powerful people had been searching for. And Leonard had just sold her location for $5,000. The meal stretched into an hour. Oliver's laughter rang through the diner, pure, unfiltered, the kind of joy that made even the gruff cook behind the counter pause and smile. Lily had found a kindred spirit, someone who listened to her stories with rapt attention, who didn't interrupt or look bored or check a phone. For the first time in months, she felt seen. Ethan watched his daughter glow, actually glow, and something ancient and painful shifted in his chest. This was what he'd been missing. Not another zero in his bank account. Not another skyscraper with his name on it. Not another empire built on 16-hour days and forgotten promises. Just this. His daughter. Happy. And it had taken a stranger's child to show him. Eva watched too, her expression caught between gratitude and grief. She knew this moment was borrowed. Temporary. A pocket of warmth in an otherwise freezing existence. Tomorrow, they'd be back in the studio apartment with a broken heater and the landlord who knocked too loudly. Back to rationing meals. Back to the suffocating algebra of survival. Which bills to pay, which to dodge, how to stretch $3 across 4 days. But tonight, her son was warm. Federal smiling. Tonight was enough. She had to believe it was enough. Thank you, she whispered to Ethan, her voice breaking on the words like thin ice. You didn't have to do this. Yes, Ethan said quietly, his eyes distant, haunted. I did. There was something in his tone, something weighted with old ghosts and unpaid debts, that made Eva study him more closely. His suit was expensive, tailored to perfection, but his eyes looked carved from grief. Like a man who'd won everything and lost what mattered most. Like her. Why? She asked, leaning forward slightly. Why help us? You don't know us. Ethan's throat worked. He opened his mouth. And that's when the door slammed open. 2 men entered. The temperature in the diner seemed to drop 10 degrees. Both wore dark suits, crisp and expensive, the kind that whispered money and threat in equal measure. Both had the cold, efficient posture of private security, or worse. One was tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar slicing across his temple like a permanent reminder of violence. The other was leaner, sharper, with eyes like a hawk scanning prey. Leonard the manager straightened immediately, his expression shifting into something obsequious and eager. He nodded toward the booth. Toward them. Eva's entire body went rigid. The color drained from her face so quickly Ethan thought she might faint. Her hand shot across the table, gripping Oliver's wrist. No, she breathed, the word barely a sound. No, no, no. She yanked Oliver out of the booth so fast his juice spilled across the table, spreading like blood. Eva! Ethan stood, alarm spiking through him like adrenaline. What's wrong? We have to go, she gasped, pulling Oliver toward the back exit, her movements frantic, animal. We have to go now. Ms. Brooks. The taller man's voice boomed through the diner, deep and unyielding. Stop. She didn't stop. She ran. Oliver stumbled, confused and terrified, his small legs struggling to keep pace as she dragged him toward the kitchen. Lily's eyes went wide with horror. Daddy! Ethan didn't think. He moved. Instinct took over, the same instinct that had built an empire, that had survived boardroom coups and hostile takeovers. The instinct to protect. He stepped directly into the path of the two men, his body a wall between them and Eva. "Excuse me," he said, his voice dropping into the tone that made billionaires blink and lawyers hesitate. "Who the hell are you?" The scarred man didn't blink. His expression was carved from stone. "This doesn't concern you, sir. Step aside." A terrified woman running from two men in suits? That makes it my concern. "Sir." The lean one reached into his jacket. Ethan's pulse spiked. Every muscle coiled. But the man didn't pull a weapon. He pulled a badge. Private investigator. Licensed. Legal. The lean man's voice was cold, clinical. "Ms. Brooks is wanted for questioning regarding the estate of the late Jonathan Ashford. She's been evading contact for 6 months. We're authorized by the probate court to bring her in." Ethan's mind raced. Jonathan Ashford. He knew that name. Everyone in his world did. Real estate mogul. East Coast dynasty. Old money with roots so deep they strangled. Hotels, commercial properties, political connections. Dead 3 years ago under circumstances the tabloids called suspicious and the coroner called inconclusive. "Questioning isn't kidnapping," Ethan said evenly, his lawyer brain activating. "And last I checked, she has the right to refuse. She also has the legal obligation to appear before the probate court. She's missed 4 summons. Maybe she never received them. Maybe," the scarred man said coldly, "she's been hiding." Behind him, Ethan heard Eva's ragged breathing. She'd stopped running, cornered like prey. The cook, a mountain of a man with arms like tree trunks, had moved to block the back exit, clearly paid off by Leonard. Ethan turned slightly, meeting Eva's eyes. She looked shattered, trapped, terrified in a way that made his chest ache. "Eva," he said gently, his voice cutting through her panic. "Do you know these men?" She nodded, her whole body trembling like a leaf in a storm. "They work for the Ashford family." "Why are they looking for you?" Her voice cracked, splintering into pieces. "Because Jonathan Ashford was my father." The diner went dead silent. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. Lily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Ethan's world tilted, the axis shifting. Her father. Margaret Brooks had never mentioned a husband. Never mentioned wealth or family beyond her daughter. She'd lived in a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper, worked 2 jobs, one at a laundromat, one cleaning offices at night, and barely scraped by. But she'd always told Ethan, her voice soft but firm, "I made mistakes. I walked away from the wrong life to build the right one." He'd never understood. Until now. Margaret had been connected to the Ashford dynasty. And she'd walked away. Chosen poverty over poison. And now they wanted her daughter. "Miss Brooks," the scarred man said, and his tone had shifted, almost gentle now, which somehow made it worse. "Your father's will named you as a primary beneficiary. You're entitled to a significant portion of the estate. But the family is contesting the will. You need to come with us. Tonight. The lawyers are waiting." Eva shook her head violently, backing against the wall. "I don't want his money. I never wanted anything from him. It's not about what you want. It's about what's legal. He abandoned us." Her voice rose, raw and jagged, 15 years of pain ripping free. "He left my mother to die in poverty while he built his empire. While he smiled for cameras and shook hands with senators. I don't want a single cent from that man." "Your son might feel differently when he's older," the lean man said quietly. "The inheritance is substantial. Enough to change his life." Oliver whimpered, clinging to his mother's leg, his face buried in her wet coat. And that was what broke Ethan. The sight of a 6-year-old boy terrified, clinging to his mother while men in suits talked about money like it mattered more than safety. Like it mattered more than love. Margaret's voice echoed in his skull. You matter. Don't you forget that. It was December, he began, his voice quiet but steady. Coldest winter in 50 years. I was 17. My parents had kicked me out 6 months earlier. I'd been couch surfing, but I'd burned through every friend I had. I was sleeping in doorways, under bridges, stealing food when I could. I hadn't eaten in 3 days. Eva's hand covered her mouth. I collapsed outside a laundromat on 5th and Brennan. I thought I was going to die there. I wanted to die there. His voice cracked. And then this woman came out. She was finishing a double shift. She should have walked past me. Everyone else did. But she didn't, Eva whispered. No. She crouched down, put her hand on my forehead and said, Child, you're burning up. Ethan's eyes glistened. She took me to her apartment. It was tiny, barely bigger than this booth. But it was warm. She made me tea, chamomile, and cinnamon toast because that's all she had. A sob broke from Eva's throat, because she remembered that tea, that toast, the smell of cinnamon and safety. She let me sleep on her couch for 3 months, Ethan continued. She worked 2 jobs, but she always made sure I ate. She helped me forge documents to get back into school. She stayed up with me while I studied for my GED. She told me I was smart, that I mattered, that I had a future. His voice broke completely. No one had ever said that to me before. Tears streamed down Eva's face. She pushed me to apply for scholarships. I got a full ride to State University, business and economics. The day I left, she packed me a lunch in a paper bag. Inside was a note. Ethan pulled out his wallet, expensive leather, monogrammed, and from a hidden pocket, he withdrew a small worn piece of paper. He unfolded it with trembling hands. The ink was faded, the creases deep from being folded and unfolded 1,000 times. He read it aloud, his voice barely a whisper. Ethan, you matter. Don't you forget that. Build something beautiful. Make me proud. Margaret. The diner was silent except for the rain. I built an empire on those words, Ethan said, looking at Eva. I named my first company Brooks and Associates in her honor. I looked for her for years. I wanted to pay her back, to give her everything, to tell her she was right. And Eva's voice was a broken rasp. By the time I found her address, she was gone. Dead for 2 years. Ovarian cancer. Died in a county hospital because she couldn't afford treatment. Because she gave everything to everyone else and had nothing left for herself. Eva covered her face with both hands, her shoulders shaking. I searched for you, Ethan said desperately. I searched everywhere. But there was no forwarding address. No records. You'd vanished. I was in foster care, Eva whispered through her hands. After she died. I aged out at 18. Changed my address 6 times in 4 years. I didn't want to be found. By who? She looked up, her face streaked with tears. By him. By Jonathan Ashford. My father. Ethan slid into the booth beside her, not too close, respecting her space, but close enough to matter. Tell me, he said gently. Eva looked at Oliver, who had fallen into an exhausted sleep against her chest. She stroked his hair, her movements automatic, soothing. My mother was 22 when she met him, Eva began, her voice hollow. She worked at one of his hotels. Housekeeping. He was 45. Married. Powerful. He pursued her. Promised her things. She was young and stupid and desperate to believe someone like him could love someone like her. Ethan's jaw tightened. She got pregnant. With me. And the moment she told him, he changed. Became cold. Offered her money to take care of it. Eva's voice hardened. She refused. So he had her fired. Blacklisted from every hotel chain on the East Coast. She couldn't get work. Couldn't get references. She had to move across the state just to find a job washing dishes. And he never helped. Never. Not once. She tried to reach out when I was born. Sent him pictures. Letters. Begging for help. He sent lawyers. Threatened her with restraining orders if she ever contacted him again. Said if she went public, he'd destroy her. Take me away. Put me in the system. Eva's hands shook. So she stayed quiet. Worked herself to the bone to keep a roof over our heads. And when she got sick, her voice broke. When she got sick, she didn't tell anyone. Didn't go to the doctor until it was too late. Because she couldn't afford to miss work. Because if she lost her jobs, we'd lose everything. Lily was crying now, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. Ethan's heart was in pieces. I was 16 when she died, Eva whispered. 16 and alone. And 3 days after her funeral, those same lawyers showed up. Said Jonathan Ashford wanted to do right by me. Offered me money. A trust fund. College tuition. Everything. But you refused. I told them to go to hell. Her eyes blazed. I didn't want his blood money. I didn't want anything from the man who let my mother die. So I ran. Changed my name. Took my mother's maiden name, Brooks. Stayed off the grid. Met Oliver's father when I was 21. He seemed kind. Gentle. Her expression darkened. He wasn't. He was controlling. Manipulative. When I got pregnant, he changed. Just like Ashford had with my mother. History repeating itself. She laughed bitterly. He left when Oliver was 2. Hasn't seen him since. Ethan wanted to put his fist through a wall. And now, Eva continued, her voice shaking, Jonathan Ashford is dead. And apparently, he left me money in his will. Money I don't want. Money that comes with strings and lawyers and a family that hates me for existing. Why do they want you so badly? Ethan asked. Because the will is being contested by his legitimate children. They're claiming I'm not his daughter. That my mother fabricated the whole thing. If I don't show up to the hearings, don't submit to DNA testing, they win by default. The entire inheritance goes to them. How much are we talking about? Eva's voice was flat. $43 million. Ethan's eyebrows shot up. I don't want it, Eva said fiercely. I don't want a single cent. But those investigators? They don't care what I want. They're being paid by the estate attorneys to find me. To drag me into court. To make me fight for money I never asked for. You could walk away. I've been walking away. For 6 years. And they keep finding me. Her voice rose, then caught. She glanced at Oliver, made sure he was still asleep. Every time I think we're safe, they show up. We've moved 8 times. I work under the table so they can't trace me. I can't even open a bank account. Eva! I just want them to leave us alone, she whispered, her voice breaking. I just want to raise my son in peace. Is that too much to ask? Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. At the exhaustion etched into her face. At the fierce protectiveness in her eyes. At the way she held her son like he was her entire world. She was Margaret all over again. Strong. Stubborn. Willing to sacrifice everything for the people she loved. And just like Margaret, she was drowning. Not this time. What if you didn't have to run anymore? Ethan said quietly. Eva frowned. What? What if you had protection? Legal representation? Resources? I can't afford. I can. She stared at him. Let me help you, Ethan said, his voice urgent. Let me do for you what I should have done for your mother. Let me fight for you. Why? Eva's voice was raw. Why would you do that? Because I owe her everything. Because she saved my life and I never got to say thank you. Because you're her daughter and you deserve better than this. Eva's eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the hidden cost. She found none. I don't even know you, she whispered. I know. But I knew your mother. And that's enough. Across the table, Lily reached out and squeezed Eva's hand. Please, Lily whispered. Let him help. He's good at helping. He just forgets sometimes. Ethan's heart cracked. Eva looked at Lily, at Oliver sleeping in her arms, at Ethan, whose eyes held ghosts and hope in equal measure. And slowly, so slowly, she nodded. Okay, she breathed. But outside the diner, a black sedan idled in the rain. Inside, the scarred investigator made a phone call. We found her, he said. And there's a complication. Ethan Ward is involved. On the other end of the line, a woman's voice, cold, clipped, aristocratic, responded. Then handle him. I don't care what it costs. I want her in that courtroom. And I want her destroyed. The call ended. The sedan pulled away, disappearing into the storm. And the clock started ticking. What would you do if you discovered your parent left you millions, but accepting it meant facing the family that destroyed your mother? Tell me below. Ethan's apartment was nothing like Eva expected. She'd imagined cold marble, stark minimalism, the kind of sterile wealth that screamed money but whispered loneliness. Instead, she found floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, yes, but also overstuffed bookshelves, framed crayon drawings clearly made by Lily, a worn leather couch that had seen years of use, and a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon. Like home. Like her mother's apartment, a lifetime ago. The guest room is down the hall, Ethan said, carrying a sleeping Oliver with surprising gentleness. It has its own bathroom. Clean towels are in the closet. Eva followed, her wet boots leaving marks on the hardwood floor. She wanted to apologize. Wanted to take them off. But she couldn't make her hands work properly. Everything felt surreal. 6 hours ago, she'd been counting coins for a glass of water. Now she was in a penthouse with a man who claimed to owe her dead mother everything. Ethan laid Oliver on the bed, a real bed, with soft sheets and too many pillows. The boy didn't stir. Exhaustion had claimed him completely. Thank you, Eva whispered, her voice hoarse. Ethan nodded, stepping back to give her space. There are clothes in the dresser. My assistant keeps the place stocked for guests. Should be something that fits. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. He turned to leave. Ethan. He stopped. Why are you really doing this? His shoulders tensed. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Because your mother told me I mattered when no one else did, he said finally, not turning around. And I'm not going to let her daughter face this alone. He left before she could respond. An hour later, Eva found him in the living room, phone pressed to his ear, pacing like a caged animal. I don't care if he's in Geneva, Ethan said sharply. Wake him up. I need the best estate attorney on the East Coast, and I need him yesterday. He paused, listening. No. Not a referral. David himself. Tell him it's personal. Yes, I know what time it is. Fine. Have him call me the second he's available. He hung up, dragged a hand through his hair. You should be resting, he said, noticing Eva. Can't. She changed into borrowed clothes, soft leggings and an oversized sweater that smelled like lavender detergent. Her hair was still damp. My brain won't stop. I know the feeling. She moved to the window, staring out at the city lights. From up here, the world looked small, manageable. It was a lie, but a beautiful one. I've been running for so long, she said quietly. I don't know how to stop. You don't have to run anymore. You don't know what they're capable of. The Ashford family, they're connected, powerful. They've made people disappear for less than what I represent. I'm not exactly powerless. She turned to face him. This isn't your fight. Yes, Ethan said firmly. It is. Before she could argue, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowned. It's my head of security, he said, answering. Yeah. What? When? Jesus. Okay. Lock it down. I want full surveillance on the building. No one gets in without clearance. He hung up, his expression darkening. What happened? Eva asked, fear spiking through her. Someone tried to access the building's resident directory 20 minutes ago. Used a fake credentials. Security stopped them, but they got away. Eva's blood turned to ice. They found us already. They're not getting to you. I've got round-the-clock security. This building is a fortress. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Ethan moved toward her, his voice steady. They want you scared. They want you running. That's how they win. But we're not giving them that. His phone rang again. He answered immediately. David. Thank you for calling back. Yes, it's urgent. I need you to represent someone in an estate dispute. The Ashford estate. Eva watched his expression change. Watched the color drain from his face. What do you mean conflict of interest? Ethan said slowly. The voice on the other end spoke. Eva couldn't hear the words, but she could see their impact. Ethan's jaw clenched. Are you absolutely certain? How much? Christ. Okay. No, I understand. Thanks anyway. He hung up. Stood very still. Ethan! Eva's voice was small. He turned to her, and his eyes were haunted. 3 years ago, he said carefully, my company acquired a portfolio of commercial properties. It was handled through a subsidiary. I didn't oversee the details personally. My acquisitions team did. Eva's stomach dropped. No. The portfolio was part of the Ashford estate liquidation, Ethan continued, his voice hollow. Which means I've done business with them. Which means any attorney I hire could argue conflict of interest. Which means... You can't represent me, Eva finished. The words hung between them like a death sentence. There has to be another way, Ethan said desperately. I'll find someone else. Someone with no connections. His phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. Ethan opened it. His face went white. What? Eva demanded. What is it? Wordlessly, he turned the phone toward her. The message contained a single photo. Oliver. Asleep in the guest room. In this apartment. Taken 15 minutes ago. Below the photo, a message. We can get to him anywhere. Stop interfering, Mr. Ward. Or the boy pays the price. You have 48 hours to deliver Eva Brooks to us. Alone. Eva's knees gave out. Ethan caught her, his arms wrapping around her as she collapsed against him. No, she sobbed. No, no, no. He's safe, Ethan said urgently, already moving. He's in the next room, he's safe. They ran. Burst through the guest room door. Oliver was there. Still sleeping. Peaceful. Untouched. But the window, 3 stories up, supposedly secure, was open. A single black feather rested on the windowsill. A calling card. A promise. Eva scooped Oliver into her arms, clutching him so tightly he stirred, mumbling in confusion. Ethan slammed the window shut, his hands shaking with rage. How did they get in? Eva whispered, her voice breaking. How did they? I don't know. Ethan pulled out his phone, dialing security. But I'm going to find out. And when I do... This is my fault, Eva said, tears streaming down her face. I should never have come here. I should never have dragged you into this. Stop. They'll hurt him. They'll hurt Oliver to get to me. I have to go. I have to turn myself in. Absolutely not. You don't understand. Eva's voice cracked. I can't lose him. He's all I have. If anything happens to him— Nothing is going to happen to him, Ethan said fiercely. I promise you, I will not let them touch him. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Same unknown number. We're watching. We're always watching. Tick-tock, Mr. Ward. Eva looked at Ethan, her eyes wild with terror. And Ethan realized with crystalline clarity that he was in over his head. He'd built an empire, but he'd never faced an enemy like this. And the person he cared about most, the daughter of the woman who'd saved his life, was about to be ripped away from him, unless he did something unthinkable. Across the city, in a penthouse even more opulent than Ethan's, a woman stood by the window. She was elegant, 50s, perfectly coiffed, dripping in diamonds. Victoria Ashford, Jonathan's widow. Is it done? She asked without turning. Yes, ma'am, the scarred investigator replied. The message was delivered. He's rattled. Good. Victoria's smile was cold. Ethan Ward thinks he can play hero, but he's about to learn what happens when you interfere with an Ashford. She turned, her eyes glittering with malice. By the time I'm done, Eva Brooks will wish she'd never been born. Eva was gone by morning. Ethan woke to silence, the kind that screamed wrongness. He bolted from the couch where he'd spent the night keeping watch, and ran to the guest room. Empty. The bed was made with military precision. Oliver's borrowed clothes were folded neatly on the dresser. And on the pillow, a note in shaking handwriting. I'm sorry. I can't let them hurt my son because of me. Thank you for everything. Tell Lily she's braver than she knows. Please don't look for us. Eva. No. The word ripped from Ethan's throat. No, no, no. He grabbed his phone, dialed the number he'd saved from last night. It rang once. Twice. Mr. Ward. The voice was smooth, victorious. The scarred investigator. I assume you're calling about Ms. Brooks. Where is she? Ethan's voice was lethal. Exactly where she belongs. She turned herself in 2 hours ago. She's currently en route to the Ashford estate for preliminary depositions. You threatened a child. We provided motivation. There's a difference. The man's tone was clinical. Ms. Brooks made the right choice. For everyone involved. I suggest you do the same. Forget you ever met her. The line went dead. Ethan stood frozen, his mind racing. She'd walked into the lion's den, alone, to protect Oliver, just like her mother had sacrificed everything to protect her. History, repeating itself again. His phone rang. Lily's nanny. Mr. Ward, I'm so sorry to bother you, but Lily's asking about the woman and the little boy from last night. She's quite upset. Should I? Tell her I'll be there soon, Ethan said, his voice hollow. He hung up, stared at the note in his hand, and for the first time in 15 years, Ethan Ward felt completely, utterly powerless. The Ashford estate was everything Eva remembered and worse. Sprawling, ostentatious, cold despite the ornate furnishings and priceless art. She sat in a leather chair in a room designed to intimidate, dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk the size of a car. Across from her sat 3 people. Victoria Ashford, her father's widow, elegant and venomous. Christopher Ashford, her half-brother, 42, cold eyes. Jonathan's legitimate heir, and a lawyer whose nameplate read Harrison Finch, Esquire. Shark's eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Miss Brooks, Victoria said, her voice dripping with false warmth. How kind of you to finally join us. Eva said nothing. She'd left Oliver with a woman from a shelter she trusted, the only person she could trust. He was safe. Hidden. That was all that mattered. Let's dispense with pleasantries, Christopher said coldly. You're here because our father, in a moment of what we can only assume was dementia, named you in his will. I don't want his money, Eva said. How noble! Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. You see, if you refuse the inheritance, it triggers a clause that divides your portion among several charities. Charities that would very much like to audit how we've managed the estate these past 3 years. Finch leaned forward. Which brings us to our proposal. He slid a document across the desk. You sign this affidavit stating that you are not Jonathan Ashford's biological daughter, that your mother fabricated the relationship. In exchange, we pay you $2 million. Cash. Untraceable. Enough to start over anywhere in the world. Eva stared at the paper. $2 million. Enough to give Oliver everything. Safety. Education. A future. All she had to do was call her mother a liar. Erase her existence. Pretend her father's abandonment never happened. And if I refuse? Eva asked quietly. Victoria's expression turned glacial. Then we bury you. She opened a folder, spread photos across the desk. We have evidence of your unstable history. Multiple addresses in 6 years. Working under the table. No tax records. Associating with known criminals. I've never. Haven't you? Christopher smiled. Oliver's father. James Rivera. Currently serving 8 years for armed robbery. You lived with him for 3 years. Eva's blood turned to ice. I left him before he. The courts won't care. Especially when we petition for a psychological evaluation. When we demonstrate that you're an unfit mother. When we suggest that Oliver would be better off in foster care while this is sorted out. The room tilted. You can't. We can, Victoria said softly. And we will. Unless you sign. Eva's hands shook. They had her. Completely. Sign the paper, and Oliver was safe, but her mother's memory was destroyed. Refuse, and they'd take Oliver away while the legal battle dragged on for years. There was no winning. There never had been. I need time, Eva whispered. You have 1 hour, Finch said. We'll be back with a notary. They left her alone in that vast, cold room, and Eva Brooks, daughter of Margaret Brooks, mother of Oliver, put her head in her hands and wept. Ethan stood outside the Ashford estate gates. Security had stopped him half a mile back. Private property. No access without authorization. He'd called in every favor he had. No one would touch this. The Ashfords were too connected, too powerful, too ruthless. He'd built an empire, but it meant nothing here. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A photo. Eva. In that room. Head in her hands. Broken. Below it. She's signing in 30 minutes. It's over, Mr. Ward. You lost. Ethan's vision blurred. He'd failed. Failed Margaret. Failed Eva. Failed the promise he'd made to himself 15 years ago. I'll pay it forward. I'll be the person she was for me. But he wasn't. He was just a man with money and no power where it mattered. Behind him, a car pulled up. Daddy! He turned. Lily stood there, her nanny's hand on her shoulder. Lily, what are you? You were going to fight for them without me, Lily said, her voice small but fierce. That's not fair. Sweetheart, this isn't. You said Eva's mom saved your life, Lily interrupted, tears streaming down her face. You said we owe her. So we fight. Together. Ethan stared at his daughter. 8 years old. Braver than he'd ever been. And suddenly, he remembered something Margaret had told him, the night before he left for university. When you can't find the door, Ethan, you build one. He pulled out his phone. Made one last call. This is Ethan Ward, he said. I need an emergency favor. And I need it now. Because he'd just realized he'd been playing the wrong game. The Ashfords had power. But Ethan Ward had something they'd never understood. He had nothing left to lose. The call Ethan made wasn't to a lawyer. It wasn't to a politician or a judge or another billionaire. It was to a journalist. Specifically, Rachel Keating, investigative reporter for the National Chronicle. The woman who'd built her career on exposing corruption in America's wealthiest families. "Miss Keating," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. "I have a story for you. And you have exactly 27 minutes to break it before it's buried forever." Inside the Ashford estate, Eva stared at the document. Her hand hovered over the pen. "Just sign it. Save Oliver. That's all that matters." But her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "The truth matters, baby girl. Even when it costs us everything." Margaret had lived by those words. Had died by them. And Eva was about to betray them. The door opened. Victoria entered, smiling like a cat with a cornered mouse. "Time's up, dear. Have you made your decision?" Eva's hand trembled. She picked up the pen. Victoria's smile widened. And then, every phone in the room buzzed simultaneously. Victoria frowned, glanced at her screen. Her face went white. "What?" she breathed. "What is this?" Christopher burst through the door, his phone clutched in his shaking hand. "We have a problem. A major problem." He turned his screen toward his mother. The National Chronicle homepage blazed across it. Ashford Dynasty's dark secret, billionaire's illegitimate daughter threatened, child endangered in estate battle. Below the headline, photos, documents, financial records, evidence of the Ashfords' systematic campaign to silence Eva. Transcripts of the threatening messages sent to Ethan. The photo of Oliver sleeping, obtained illegally, proof of breaking and entering. Financial ties between the Ashford estate and known criminals hired to intimidate Eva. And, most damning, evidence that Jonathan Ashford had tried to support Eva and Margaret years ago, only to be blocked by Victoria, who'd threatened him with divorce and public scandal if he acknowledged his illegitimate daughter. Victoria had orchestrated everything. The abandonment, the silence, the suffering, all to protect her image and her inheritance. "How?" Victoria whispered, her perfectly composed mask cracking. "How did they?" The door burst open. Ethan Ward strode in, Lily at his side, flanked by building security who looked very uncomfortable but were clearly under orders. "You can't be here," Christopher snarled. "This is private property." "Actually," Ethan said coldly, "as of 6 minutes ago, I purchased the controlling interest in Ashford Properties through a subsidiary. Which makes me your new majority shareholder. Which means I can be wherever I want." He'd liquidated 1/4 of his portfolio in 20 minutes, called in debts from a dozen investors, bought his way into their world. Victoria's face contorted with rage. "You can't. I already did." Ethan's voice was ice. "And the FBI is currently reviewing the evidence of witness intimidation, unlawful surveillance, and conspiracy that Miss Keating so helpfully forwarded to them." He moved to Eva, who sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. "You're safe now," he said softly. "It's over. Oliver is fine. My security team picked him up 10 minutes ago. He's with Lily's nanny. Safe." Eva's sob was equal parts relief and disbelief. Ethan turned to Victoria, his expression carved from stone. "You wanted to destroy her because she represented everything you're afraid of. The truth. Consequences. The fact that your perfect life was built on cruelty." His voice dropped. "But you made one mistake. And what's that?" "Victoria's spat. You threatened a child in front of someone who knows exactly what it's like to be that child." Ethan's eyes burned. "And I won't let history repeat itself. Not this time." Behind him, federal agents entered. "Victoria Ashford." The lead agent held up a badge. "We have a warrant for your arrest." Victoria's world crumbled. Christopher backed away, already calling his own lawyer, distancing himself. And Eva, broken, exhausted Eva, stood on shaking legs. Ethan caught her as she stumbled. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you." For the first time in 6 years, Eva Brooks believed she might actually be safe. Outside, Lily ran to them. "Is she okay?" Lily asked urgently. "She will be," Ethan said. And for the first time in years, he believed it too. Because sometimes, the only way to save someone is to burn down the walls trapping them. Even if it costs you everything. The courtroom was packed. 3 weeks had passed since Eva's rescue from the Ashford estate. 3 weeks of depositions, DNA tests, media frenzy, and legal maneuvering that would have crushed her if she'd faced it alone. But she hadn't been alone. Ethan had hired the best legal team money could buy, attorneys who weren't afraid of the Ashford name, who believed in justice over billable hours. And today, the probate court would render its final decision. Eva sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded in her lap. She wore a simple navy dress, borrowed from Ethan's assistant. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup, no pretense, just the truth. Beside her, Ethan sat in a chair that wasn't technically his. He wasn't her attorney of record, but no one had dared to ask him to leave. In the gallery, Lily sat with Oliver, the 2 children holding hands, whispering encouragement to each other. Across the aisle, Christopher Ashford sat alone. Victoria was in federal custody, awaiting trial for witness intimidation and conspiracy. His expensive legal team surrounded him like sharks circling wounded prey. The judge entered, Honorable Patricia Morales, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen every manipulation in the book. "All rise." The courtroom stood. "Be seated." Judge Morales settled behind her bench, reviewing documents with methodical precision. "We're here today for the final ruling in the matter of the estate of Jonathan Ashford, deceased." Eva's heart hammered. "This court has reviewed extensive evidence," Judge Morales continued, "including DNA analysis confirming, without question, that Ms. Eva Brooks is the biological daughter of Jonathan Ashford." Christopher's jaw clenched. "We've also reviewed correspondence between Mr. Ashford and Margaret Brooks spanning 15 years, correspondence that was deliberately concealed by Victoria Ashford to prevent Mr. Ashford from fulfilling his financial and parental obligations." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Judge Morales fixed Christopher with a hard stare. "The court finds that the will is valid, that Ms. Brooks is entitled to her full inheritance as outlined. And furthermore," she paused, letting the weight settle. "This court is appalled by the systematic campaign of harassment, intimidation, and cruelty inflicted upon Ms. Brooks and her minor child. The behavior of the Ashford family in this matter has been nothing short of reprehensible." Christopher stood abruptly. "Your Honor, I object." "Sit down." Judge Morales's voice cracked like a whip. "You don't get to object to the truth, Mr. Ashford." He sat, his face flushed with rage and humiliation. "Ms. Brooks," Judge Morales said, her tone softening, "I'm granting you full access to your inheritance, $43 million, plus accumulated interest. Additionally, I'm awarding you compensatory damages for emotional distress in the amount of $5 million, to be paid by the estate." Eva's breath caught. "However," the judge continued, "I'm also offering you a choice." Eva frowned. "Your Honor, your father's will included a provision that has not been made public until now." Judge Morales pulled out a sealed envelope. "He left you a letter, to be read only if you were found and the inheritance validated. Before you accept or refuse the money, you have the right to read his words." The courtroom went silent. Eva's hands trembled. Ethan leaned close. "You don't have to," he whispered. "Not if you're not ready." But Eva stood, walked to the bench, took the envelope with shaking hands. Judge Morales nodded. "Take your time." Eva returned to her seat, opened the envelope. Inside, a single page. Handwritten. the ink slightly smudged, as if tears had fallen on it. She read aloud, her voice breaking. Eva, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you've finally been found. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I was a coward. I let the woman I loved suffer because I was too weak to stand up to my family, to my wife, to the world. Margaret was the bravest person I ever knew. She loved you with a ferocity that terrified and humbled me. When she refused my money, my help, I told myself it was pride. But the truth is, she saw what I was. A man who valued reputation over responsibility. I failed her. I failed you. But I never forgot. Not for a single day. This money won't erase my failures. It won't bring your mother back. It won't give you the childhood you deserved. But it's yours. Use it. Build something beautiful. Become the person your mother raised you to be. And if you can find it in your heart, not now, maybe not ever, but someday, forgive me. Your father, Jonathan. Eva's tears fell onto the page, blurring the ink further. The courtroom was silent except for muffled sobs from the gallery. Judge Morales's eyes glistened. Ethan's hand found Eva's, squeezing gently. He knew, Eva whispered. He knew what she sacrificed. And he was ashamed, Ethan said quietly. As he should have been. Eva looked at the letter, at the $48 million that came with it, at the life it could buy. Then she looked back at Oliver and Lily, holding hands, watching her with hope in their eyes. And she knew what her mother would say. The truth matters. But so does moving forward. Eva stood. Your Honor, she said, her voice steady. I accept the inheritance. Christopher shot to his feet. This is... Furthermore, Eva continued, ignoring him, I'm donating $20 million to establish the Margaret Brooks Foundation, providing housing, food assistance, and legal aid to single mothers in crisis. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morales's smile was fierce. Motion noted and approved. Eva turned to Christopher. You wanted to erase me. Erase my mother. Pretend we never existed. Her voice was quiet, but rang with power. But we did exist. We mattered. And now, my mother's name will help thousands of women who are exactly where she was. She sat down. Judge Morales banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Ms. Brooks, congratulations. And thank you for showing us what grace looks like. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. But Ethan's security created a path. Eva walked through, head high, Oliver in her arms. Lily walked beside them, holding Eva's free hand. And Ethan walked behind them, protective, proud, present. Ms. Brooks, a reporter shouted. How does it feel to win? Eva stopped, turned, looked directly into the cameras. I didn't win, she said clearly. My mother won. Because they tried to silence her story, and instead, it's going to save lives. She walked away, and the world watched. Because sometimes, the greatest victory isn't wealth. It's transforming pain into purpose. 6 months later, snow fell on Margaret's grave. Eva knelt, brushing a light dusting from the headstone, new, elegant black granite that replaced the simple marker the county had provided. She placed a bouquet of white lilies against it. I think you'd be proud, Mom, she whispered. Maybe not of the money, but of what I'm doing with it. Behind her, Oliver built a tiny snowman with Lily, their laughter rising like music in the quiet cemetery. They'd become inseparable, two children who understood loneliness, who recognized in each other something worth protecting. Ethan stood a respectful distance away, giving Eva space for this moment. His breath clouded in the cold air. He wore no gloves, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched against memories. Eva stood, turned to him. Would you like a moment alone with her? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. As Eva walked to the children, Ethan approached the grave, knelt in the snow, touched the cold stone with trembling fingers. "Hello, Margaret," he said softly. "I kept my promise. I built something beautiful. And I think I finally understand what you meant." He placed a folded piece of paper beneath the flowers. It was the note she'd written him 15 years ago. "You matter. Don't you forget that." "I never did," Ethan whispered. "And neither did she." The Margaret Brooks Foundation opened its doors on what would have been Margaret's 50th birthday. A converted hotel in the heart of the city, providing emergency housing for single mothers and their children, medical care, job training, legal assistance, everything Margaret had needed and never received. Eva stood at the podium, facing a crowd of reporters, donors, and the first families who would call this place home. "My mother used to say that kindness isn't what you do when it's easy," Eva said, her voice clear and strong. "It's what you do when it costs you everything." She looked at Ethan, who stood in the front row, Lily beside him. "Some people understand that instinctively. Some learn it through pain. And some of us," her voice caught, "some of us are lucky enough to witness it firsthand, through the love of someone who never gives up on us." The ribbon was cut. The doors opened, and 30 women and their children walked into safety. That night, Ethan hosted a small celebration at his apartment, now filled with laughter, with life, with the organized chaos of children and hope. Eva sat on the balcony, watching the city lights. Oliver was asleep inside, curled up with a stuffed bear Lily had insisted he needed. Ethan joined her, offering a cup of tea. Chamomile, like her mother used to make. "Thank you," she said, taking it. "For everything." "I should be thanking you," Ethan replied quietly. "For what?" He gestured inside, where Lily was setting the table for breakfast the next morning, humming to herself. "For giving her back her father." Eva's smile was soft. She always had him. He just needed a reminder. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, at the strength in her eyes, at the grace in her smile, at the way she carried her mother's spirit and her own hard-won wisdom. "Eva," he said carefully, "I don't want to overstep. But the foundation is taking off. You're making a difference. Oliver is thriving. But what about you? What do you want for yourself?" Eva considered the question. No one had asked her that in years. Maybe ever. "I want peace," she said finally. "I want to feel safe. To trust again. To build something that lasts." "And have you found peace?" She looked at him, at the man who'd risked everything for her, who'd faced down an empire, who'd kept his promise to her mother. "I'm getting there," she whispered. Ethan's hand found hers on the balcony railing. Her fingers were cold. His were warm. "I'd like to help," he said softly. "If you'll let me." It wasn't a grand declaration. It didn't need to be. It was a beginning. Tentative. Honest. Real. Eva turned her hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "I'd like that." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall on the city below. 3 years later, Margaret Brooks would have a granddaughter. They would name her Margaret Lily Ward Brooks. She would grow up in a home filled with books, with laughter, with stories about a woman who once saved a 17-year-old boy because she believed he mattered. She would learn that family isn't always blood. That sometimes, it's the people who choose you when the world walks away. That money can't fix the past, but it can build a future. And most importantly, that one act of kindness can echo across generations, touching lives in ways you never imagined. Because that's what Margaret Brooks did. She saved one life. And in doing so, she saved thousands more, including her daughters, including her granddaughters, including, in the end, her own. Because as long as her story was told, as long as that kindness was remembered, Margaret Brooks would never truly be gone. And isn't that the greatest inheritance of all? Not wealth, not power, not revenge, but love that outlives us. Love that changes the world, one small act of kindness at a time. If this story touched your heart in ways you never expected, please join our ducal family by subscribing. And tell me, what small act of kindness changed your life? I read every comment, and I treasure each one.